The Boston Celtics lost out on the Giannis sweepstakes about a few nights ago. They attempted to trade Jaylen Brown for Giannis, and I'm sure there were some other players they may have offered in that trade, but what stands out is that they tried to trade Jaylen Brown for Giannis, and I've heard some people saying that the Celtics were playing 4D chess and that the reason they offered Jaylen Brown was because they wanted to get Miami to break the bank to get Giannis to basically throw away the farm to get him. And that was the whole point of offering Jaylen Brown for Giannis, was just to force Miami's hand to trade away so many assets. And that was a strategy, and it worked out because Miami had to give up so much to get him. And I have to disagree with that. I think that if it's true, that's a very stupid strategy in the sense because Jaylen Brown's ego is very sensitive. That we've heard it for the last few years that he doesn't like being the second guy on the Celtics. He does not enjoy being in the shadows of Jason Tatum, that it really does bother him. He feels he's just as good as Tatum or even better than Tatum, and he wants that recognition, but he's been willing to sacrifice that for a very long time. But I think now this really would have bruised his ego by doing this move. I think the only reason he was willing to sacrifice because I think he probably believed that at least the Celtics supported him or they had his back. And now with this botched up trade attempt to trade him to Milwaukee, I don't see how you'll ever trust the Celtics again. And some people will say like, well, he'll understand that he was getting traded for Giannis, who's one of the best players in the league, so he won't take it personal. And I just don't think he can be rational about it. You got to understand these guys are not like regular adults. They have egos the size of mountains, and they can't really put things to the side and just get over it quickly without feeling hurt or disrespected. And Jaylen Brown just strikes me as that guy. Like I remember watching an interview, I think maybe a month or two ago, on which he was on Vince Carter and T-Mac's podcast, in which he was telling either Vince or T-Mac that one of them told him to not mess up his situation in Boston, that he's a good thing going with Tatum, and they were telling him like, you know, you have a good thing, don't screw it up. It's much harder to win when you don't have help. You don't want to do that. And Jaylen Brown was alluding to how he's been tempted to playing on a different team simply because he wants to be the guy so badly, and how he stayed the course, you know, due to their guidance and just understanding how important winning is and valuing that. But I think this throws that all out of the window when it comes to Jaylen Brown wanting to make a sacrifice now just for the Celtics because they were willing to sacrifice him. So I think it's going to be very hard for these two sides to have a professional relationship again. It's possible that they could work it out and he could just be a professional for the rest of next season. I've seen it happen before with guys who were nearly traded but ended up staying with their team. I saw it a few times during the 90s with Scottie Pippen and the Bulls, and that was a very contentious relationship he had with Jerry Krause and Reinsdorf, especially when those guys tried to trade him first for Sean Kemp in the summer of 94, and then when they tried to trade him again in the summer of 97, ironically for Tracy McGrady. So there was always this like bad blood between him and them, but he was willing to put it aside and show up for the Bulls. Granted, I felt during his final year with the Bulls, he was very unprofessional when he delayed his surgery and decided to miss like basically half the season, almost sabotaged the Bulls' ability to win a sixth title. So that shows you how the Celtics could be on thin ice when you look at the history of how these things have panned out in the past with other guys. I remember when the Lakers trade to get Chris Paul failed and they tried to trade Lamar for Chris, and Lamar could never forgive them. He had a meltdown and they had to trade him immediately to Dallas. And even though Gasol was a professional about it, it was never the same because he was also involved in that botched, failed Chris Paul trade. Eventually ended up leaving them. So I think this will be very difficult for Boston to move forward with him because you gotta just look at the chemistry. Like if you're Jaylen Brown and you always wanted to play for your numbers and being the guy, why would you sacrifice now? Since this was your team last year, essentially, if it wasn't for Jaylen Brown, they don't have the second best season in the East. He was in considerations for the MVP talk, and then Tatum came back immediately. I think part of the reason Tatum came back early was he didn't like how Jaylen Brown was getting all this shine and attention, and he wanted to take it away. That's always my theory about it. But now going into next season, why would Jaylen Brown defer to Tatum when he probably believes he has a legit shot at getting the MVP if he has another great season and he can lead the Celtics? I think that's going to be very hard for him to defer now after what the Celtics did to him, how they stabbed him in the back. So I think there will be chemistry problems. I don't see it working out well between these two parties. I think ultimately Boston will probably have to trade him, and now we're hearing all these new rumors about him getting traded to other teams, possibly the Wolves, possibly the Hornets. Just it's been all over the place, but I don't expect Jaylen Brown to be a Celtic next year. I just think he's going to get traded. I just don't know for who, but I just think it has to happen now. I don't think Brown will want to come back to Boston after what happened. So that's pretty much all I had to say about this, and just a message to my subscribers and even viewers. If you would like me to make a video on something, just put it in the comments and I'll make a video. Also, like my videos. That also helps me. And yeah, that's pretty much it.